Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel. I'm Andrew, with you here as always. This is the Commando Cast, a video cast about all things Star Wars Destiny. This video and others like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. Please show your support with a like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new videos. If you want to get involved with the channel, consider becoming a channel member. There are many benefits to channel membership, including access to our Discord, exclusive deck tech and strategy videos, and the opportunity to help create channel content. I want to sincerely thank all our channel members, as I truly couldn't do this without your support. You guys rock. Go Commando.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Dice Commando and the Commando Cast. Andrew with you here as always, and thanks for tuning in for today's Friday Destiny chat. So Redemption's been out for a little more than a month. It's actually about 6 weeks at this point. And of course, when a new set drops, it's the way it's always been in Destiny. So much focus is on the characters, right? What pairings can I have? What do the characters do? Which characters are good, which aren't. And this is a natural thing. Obviously, it's the starting point, but it's also always just been, I'm playing Dak Benthic, I'm playing Anakin Leia, right? We talk about them in terms of teams, and thus it's very easy for us to, forget that it's not always just the characters that define our meta. The characters sometimes are just nothing more than really a vehicle for a certain playstyle. And specifically out of Redemption, there were a number of cards that have come out that have really changed, I believe, the overall meta, and they really facilitate a different play style than we've seen in the past. So today what I want to talk about is the era of control for Star Wars Destiny. So control is kind of a funny concept in Star Wars Destiny, right? If we're being honest. I mean, the easiest thing to talk about, control in the traditional sense usually involves basically sitting and disrupting your opponent's plan, not letting them do what they want to do until you can finally have that inflection point where you swing things to your favor. Either you've fatigued them out or you've just built such a board state that you can roll them over. I mean, the closest things that we've had, Mill would certainly fit into kind of that description overall. In Star Wars Destiny, we've had, other minor type things. I mean, Afra, I guess, to a certain extent kind of fits into that, not really in the traditional gaming sense, but it certainly could, like an Order 6/6 deck, or a certain extent like a captured deck, or like a money choke deck, like we're seeing with some of the pirates. Those can fit more into kind of more like a traditional control concept. So there are some specific cards that have come out of Redemption that have really changed the way that a lot of these decks are being played. I mean, I know that when I look at the duration of the average game that we've been putting up on the channel, most of them are pushing, the mid 35s, low 30s to mid 30s. Some are even going as long as 44 minutes. And that's because the game pace has really slowed down. We're looking at a lot more removal than we're used to. We're looking at a lot more healing than we're used to. And really, when you mix those two combined, it's really changed kind of the way overall. So I want to talk about the specific cards that I'm talking about. To a lesser extent, your powers are weak. Now, this card is like a hidden motive on steroids, but it's that 2-drop, and of course, it has the limitations involved in how you have to play. But there's a lot of significant, control-esque involved in this. Now, we haven't been seeing a ton of blue being, or villain blue, specifically with these subtypes. Haven't seen a ton of that being popular at this point in the Redemption meta. But I do want to bring it up because it's a very good card that has, of course, fed into this, especially when you combine it with like unending hate and other stuff like that. The three main cards that I really believe are overall defining the meta right now. First one is Power of the Tribe. This is a 2-drop card that is just really brutal, right? As long as you can spot 2 pilots, 2 Wookiees, 2 leaders, whatever, 2 troopers, whatever it may be, you can just remove 2 dice. And right, we all know how good Entangle was back in the day, right? I mean, you think about cards like Entangle, Hidden Motive, and Easy Pickings, for example, and we'll talk about the difference in those in a second, right? But this is doing basically that level of stuff. The next card that's very, very important to the way things are being played right now is Headstrong. This card is pretty crazy good, right? You roll out and you just remove 2 of their dice that just rolled out. It's worth sitting on the $2 for. And then the last card we're seeing, and yes, this is specifically toward, the other 2 were neutral. This one's specifically towards Hero Red. But I don't think it comes as any surprise here that Veteran of War is crazy good from really an Outlast standpoint. It basically does everything you want it to do. Plus it comes in for 2. You can do the overwrite. You can pop it back with being a title with You Are in Command. Tons of, I don't think anybody is not aware of this card right now. This card's definitely making ripples out there. So these are all 2-drops. Now, that's a kind of a big change. If you fundamentally think about, the overall history of Destiny, what we really have been looking at in terms of good removal in the past was Hidden Motive, Easy Pickings, Entangle to a certain extent. Yeah, it was a 2-drop, but we still consider that to be very good removal. But the other 2, the first 2, Hidden Motive and Easy Pickings, and stuff in that vein, right? Feel Your Anger, stuff in that vein, being cheaper. What it really allowed you to do was continue to ramp your game, right? Because remember, you're getting 2 resources per turn, and with kind of that being the old curve, and yes, the resource curve has changed as well, right? But with that being the old curve, it allowed you to still get some control, but you could continue to ramp your game, right? And the overall, in the grand scheme of Destiny, the overall result of that was that you could continue to build your board, which means that games overall were faster, right? Because you were getting more stuff out. Whereas today, in today's environment, we're looking at a whole bunch of these 2-drops. That's eating your turn. So in order to continue to ramp, what you're doing is you're taking resources. And that inherently slows down at least the early part of the game, because you have to resolve dice on your characters that would otherwise have been damage that you're resolving, or something to that extent that is overall extending the length of the game. And that's why I say it moves it into that control space where you're not necessarily furthering your win condition early in terms of killing anybody. You're instead building a board state to try to make that larger hit later. And in the case of Veteran of War, of course, right, you get the healing and overall. And of course, there's a lot more healing out there. Run to safety, of course, has become, obviously very prevalent just because of the certain teams we have, but you're looking to run those teams because of something like Power of the Tribe, right? And then when you stack the fact that you for red-yellow, you can run both Power of the Tribe. That's look at someone like Chewie, putting him up right now. Chewie is I would consider him to be one of the kind of non-classic control examples, right? When you look at Chewie, you don't necessarily think of him in himself as being a control character, right? Everybody, at least in my world, when you think control, you naturally think blue denial, right? And Chewie is just an Outlast. He's I'm going to remove you. I'm going to slowly further my game until you're out of stuff to do, or I'm getting, remember, you can throw a Fortitude on him and all of a sudden Feat of Strength becomes a dual removal. And that's really it, is the upgrades you're dropping on Chewie, the manner in which you're playing Chewie's deck is very much a control-esque based game in which you're trying to further your win condition by just kind of outlasting and eventually just being able to storm over your opponent. Now, okay, I'm talking about this specifically in the Redemption meta. Why are you saying it's the era of control? Well, the fact of the matter is, we're looking at, with these cards, the power of the tribe, the power of these cards specifically is going to keep them, I believe, relevant until they rotate out, which could be a year from now, right? It could be a significant amount of time where we'll see a number of sets drop at the very least before these cards rotate out. And I don't see, something like a Power of the Tribe or a Headstrong, I don't see them not becoming relevant. And when you have those that are constantly there, you're going to be skewing towards a type of character. You're going to be skewing your character selections. You're going to be changing your play style towards making sure that you can continue to play those while still continuing to improve your board state as well. Or you're going to be looking for characters like a Benthic, right? Let's not forget about Benthic's power action. That also helps to support, a control heavy meta. You're more than happy to take his power action, take the hit in order to slow your opponent down. But you look at a Benthic deck, one of the reasons that deck is so great is it doesn't actually, like if you look at it, it's 50% damage on deck. You're throwing out damage out there and you can survive just with your characters. You don't actually, in some cases, necessarily need to get stuff down on the table in order to really hit early. Now, obviously, the whole point there is that you're going to be denying and trying to overwhelm and trying to build your board state with a fleet. But that's what you're trying to do, is really just get your board state in a point. And in order to get it there, you're just going to be sitting and removing and denying. And that's why Benthic is so great again, is he fits right into that. So the other part of this that I really wanted to focus in on today is, okay, so what do we do about the control meta? Or what are the effects of that and what are the side impacts of that to the meta? And the biggest thing that I've noticed, you guys may notice one of the decks I've been playing a lot in the early RDM meta is Kylo, the Redemption Kylo with Dengar. Both of these guys provide ping damage on activation. It's one of the reasons that Leia Anakin is so strong right now, is Anakin provides the guaranteed damage. Right? When you go into a control type meta where it's people's focus is outlasting and removal and stuff like that, having those after you activate effects on your characters become that much stronger, right? So that's what we're also going to be skewing towards in, I think, the near future, or at least the current meta. But as long as you have a control heavy, die removal heavy, healing heavy meta, you're going, especially on the die removal side, right? But as long as you have this type of controlling meta, you're going to be looking for the after you activate abilities, right? Your character's dice, believe it or not, don't actually matter as much as what that character does. And I think if you look overall at a lot of the characters who have proven to be popular out of Redemption, most of the characters are being played for what they do, not for their dice, right? You look at, well, I know we already picked on Benthic, right? But you can look at Chewie. Chewie's ability works regardless of whether he's elite or non-elite. Leia works whether she's elite or non-elite. Anakin works whether he's elite or non-elite, or non-elite, right? You get where I'm going here, right? So, and you look overall in Redemption, and like, in addition to being the era of control, at least in this set to a certain extent, in many cases, we are in the era of non-elite characters, with the exception, obviously, being like Vibrosword, because that punishes for being elite as well as non-unique, or unique, right? So anyway, that's where I'm seeing a lot of the pieces kind of come together to where the meta is right now, and I do see a lot of the linchpins being some of these very, very specifically some of these very, very powerful cards that we don't necessarily give credit for. Like, a lot of times we're like, oh, Benthic's too good. And he probably is. Or we say, oh, this character pairing is too good, we need to nerf it. And what we a lot of times I think miss is the underlying reasons that those characters are good. Now, again, I don't want to sit and debate whether Benthic's too good or not with his like power action as all his other stuff. That's not the topic of this. But you see my point, right? Benthic basically brings the same to you as the player. I mean, non-elite Benthic he's basically just as good as elite Benthic, right? You can make the argument either way on Chewie, but again, in a lot of these cases, having the character ability on the table far outweighs having the character points on the table. I mean, even someone like an Afra or something like that, again, Leia, and all sorts of the good guys who we see all over the place, in many cases don't need to be elite. It's just that that's how the points work out. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as the 40-40 convents continue in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a lot of decks that don't run these big guys elite, just because they're after the effects on the table and not necessarily just the big dice. So that's kind of where my head is at in terms of looking at the future of Destiny, or at least where I think it's going, how I want to be playing it. Is definitely thinking about it in more of a control and/or how do you beat control type mindset. I mean, the obvious counter, it always has been, to control is aggro and hard aggro, right? And that's where I think those after you activate effects really start to fit in terms of today's meta, is trying to counter it via that. So anyway, with all that said today, just kind of my thoughts on, entering the era of control, and how do we deal with that, and how do we adjust? So anyway, thanks guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on this as well. So please go ahead and drop me a line below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, consider joining up to the Dice Commando team for our bi-weekly tournaments. Nothing else, folks. Go Commando.